Hello everyone. Have you ever thought that the house you live in could be as powerful as any medicine in protecting your health? Today we are going to explore the architecture of health, understanding the metrics, standards, and social goals of human housing. Housing can be understood as three concentric layers. The innermost layer is shelter, which represents the immediate physical barriers providing basic security and physiological protection. The next layer is the neighborhood and micro district, which covers the adjacent environmental quality, immediate landscape, and local safety. The outermost layer is the human settlement, which includes all necessary services, facilities, and networks required for a group to pursue their life goals. Based on the World Health Organization expert group definition, housing must be evaluated as a comprehensive residential environment, meaning the physical structure combined with all services required for the physical, mental, and social well being of the family. Good housing rests on five pillars that together support human well being. The first pillar is sanitary shelter, which fulfills the baseline physiological need for safety and hygiene. The second is family life space, ensuring adequate space for individual and shared activities to foster worker productivity and family stability. The third is access to community, providing physical proximity to health services, schools, and commerce. The fourth is community participation, creating environments where neighbors can pool efforts, offer mutual aid, and build social capital. The fifth is economic stability, where housing operates as an investment of personal savings and an anchor for household financial security. Achieving these goals requires state intervention through social schemes, enforced structural standards, and accessible credit for low income builders. When we talk about establishing physical standards for housing, there is a balance between cultural and regional flexibility and enforceable minimums. On one hand, standards must adapt to climate, standard of living, traditions, and life cycle, since rigid, uniform global standards are impossible and cannot be confined to narrow criteria like per capita space alone. On the other hand, governments enforce minimum building regulations based on available resources, aimed at protecting the vast majority of families and establishing an absolute baseline of environmental hygiene. These architectural standards are based on the foundational recommendations of the Environmental Hygiene Committee, India 1947. Let us look at the structural minimums covering site, envelope, and foundation. The roof should have a minimum height of 10 feet or 3 meters in the absence of air conditioning with a low heat transmittance coefficient. The walls should be 9-inch brick, plastered smooth in cream or white, having low heat capacity, being weather resistant and unsuited for rat or vermin harbor. The floor should be pakka, meaning impermeable, smooth and damp proof with a plinth height of 2 to 3 feet or zero point 0.6 to 1 meter, noting that mud flows break up and cause dust. The site and foundation should be elevated from surroundings, with subsoil water maintained below 10 feet or 3 meters and independent street access. It is important to note that ground leveled by dumping refuse, known as made soil, is highly unsatisfactory for building for at least 20 to 25 years. Now let us understand the spatial minimums related to interior volume and utilities. For rooms and capacity, a minimum of 2 living rooms is required, with one lockable, the minimum floor area being 120 square feet for more than one person or 100 square feet for single occupancy, and per capita space should be 50 square feet minimum, with 100 square feet as optimum. For cubic space, 500 cubic feet per capita is the minimum, with 1000 cubic feet preferred, in the absence of mechanical air replacement. For ventilation, a minimum of 2 windows per living room is needed, with window area equal to 1/5 of the floor area and doors plus windows combined equal to 2/5, placed no more than 3 feet or 1 meter above ground. For lighting, The daylight factor must exceed 1% over half the floor area. For utilities, the kitchen should be a separate room with an impervious floor and a sink for drainage. A sanitary privy is a must in every house and should be readily accessible, with water carriage systems in developed areas, and waste requires daily garbage removal. These standards differ between urban and rural contexts. In terms of built up area limit or setback, urban areas allow up to two-thirds of total area, driven by high land costs and density, while rural areas restrict this to a maximum of one-third, allowing for ample open space. For ventilation and space, urban window area is strictly one-fifth of floor area, while rural window area should be at least 10% of floor area, with ample veranda space highly recommended. For water and sanitation, urban housing requires piped water supply and a water carriage privy system, while rural housing requires a sanitary latrine and a sanitary well or tube well within a quarter mile. For zoning and environment, urban housing needs dense setbacks strategically placed away from traffic and smoke nuisances, while rural housing bans livestock from dwellings, requiring cattle sheds to be 25 feet away, open on all sides, providing 8 by 4 feet per head. When housing standards fail, the human body pays the price. This is what we call the anatomy of housing failure. Overcrowding and poor ventilation lead to respiratory infections such as tuberculosis, influenza, diphtheria, bronchitis, measles, and whooping cough. Lack of sanitation and poor water lead to skin infections like scabies, ringworm, impetigo, and leprosy. Structural cracks and poor waste management encourage vector-borne diseases such as plague from rat infestation and arthropods like houseflies, mosquitoes, fleas, and bugs. Unsafe physical arrangements contribute to trauma, forming a substantial proportion of house accidents. And high density and high rise living contribute to psychosocial problems, including isolation, neurosis, and behavior disorders. High morbidity and mortality rates are directly observed and empirically linked to substandard housing environments. To properly evaluate housing quality, we use three types of indicators. Physical indicators include floor space, room height, persons per room, and environmental quality, covering air, light, water, noise, and sewage disposal. Economic indicators include the cost of the building, rental levels, property taxes, and household expenditure on housing. Social indicators evaluate illness prevention, comfort levels, and localized mental health outcomes, focusing more closely on the social indicators of housing quality as defined at the United Nations Inter-Regional Seminar in 1975. We have three categories. Prevention of illness metrics look at the frequency of illness due to inadequate sewage or garbage, contaminated water, insect-borne vectors, overcrowding, accidents, and proximity to animals, along with access to medical facilities. Comfort metrics include thermal comfort, acoustic comfort, visual comfort, and spatial comfort. Mental health and social well-being metrics include the frequency of suicides in the neighborhood, rates of neglected and abandoned youth, and drug and alcohol abuse prevalence. To summarize, structural integrity, safe environs, and community access together equal human health. Housing standards are not merely building codes or zoning laws. Designing the residential environment is the front line of preventative medicine and the foundation of a stable human settlement. Hope you have understood about the architecture of health. If you found this video useful, please watch and share with your friends and colleagues. Thank you.